Welcome to Opinionated, here on I24 News, the show that challenges consensus, analyzes the events that shape our world, and draws out the views of our guests for the consideration of you, the viewing audience. I'm your host, Benjamin Anthony, CEO of the Miriam Institute. Today I'll be joined by the president of J Street, Jeremy Ben-Ami, and he'll be followed by a hero of Israel, IDF veteran Boris Shtonda. Jeremy Ben-Ami, thank you for joining me here on Opinionated.
Thank you very much for having me.
So, Jeremy, I wanted to begin by asking you a question that harkens back to my experience. In 2014, I spoke at Brown University, and the students that most vociferously opposed me speaking there about my time serving in the Israel Defense Forces were the representatives of J Street U. In fact, they opposed me with such vigor that the representatives of Students for Justice in Palestine and the Muslim Students Association largely fell silent. What's the status of J Street U today on American campuses?
So first of all, I'm very sorry to hear that. It is not the position of J Street in any way to boycott actually anyone. We are supportive of people speaking from the right and from the left. It is a battle on college campuses, of course, to ensure that that's actually the case. And sometimes students are a little bit more opinionated in their views than the organization as a whole. We regularly do college campus events, bringing around IDF veterans and particular commanders of Israel's security, people who have run the Shin Bet or the Mossad or been high-ranking IDF officers, to make the case to people that it is in Israel's best interests to find a way to resolve the underlying conflict with the Palestinian people. And as you know, that's a position held by a wide range of the former high-ranking officials of the IDF. So we bring folks to college campuses all the time. And I think J Street at this point, both on campus and off, represents a real middle ground in the debates about Israel in the American Jewish community. Somewhere between.
I think, Jeremy, that firstly, there are those who argue one side of the debate with regard to the best way of securing Israel's future at the senior ranks of the IDF, former IDF officers, of course, and there are those who argue in precisely the opposite direction. So we don't want to say that this is a monolithic grouping, former security experts here in Israel. I do just want to say, though, that my concern with J Street U stems from the fact that, of course, the students of today will be the policymakers of tomorrow. And I do not know of any example of J Street U bringing a supportive, pro-Israel voice to their campuses that speaks to the right of the state of Israel to go forward and resolutely smash, destroy, and bring about an end to our enemy inside the Gaza Strip. I've not heard those sorts of voices put forward under the auspices of J Street U. Would it be open to such voices today?
Right. I mean, you won't hear us formally sponsoring that because that's not J Street's position. J Street feels that the way to defeat an enemy like Hamas, which is rooted in an ideology, is not through military means. There's not a military solution to the problem that Hamas poses to Israel's security. You have to have a strong IDF and a strong security apparatus for sure, but you also need to provide the people of Gaza an alternative, hope, the route towards independence, the route towards freedom. And in fact, President Trump's 20-point plan does precisely that. And that is the kind of voice that we sponsor when we bring people to campus. Other organizations, as I was saying, are to our right and believe in supporting whatever this government of Israel does, right or wrong. Other voices to our left oppose the very existence of the state of Israel. We represent the middle ground in the debate, which supports Israel, supports the people of Israel, the right of the Jewish people to a nation.
Jeremy, I understand that. Let me ask you a question. When the former leader of Hamas, now dispatched by the Israel Defense Forces, Yahya Sinwar, called for the Gazan people and for Hamas, both of those groups, to storm the fence, to run into Israeli territory and to tear out the hearts of the Zionists, was he saying that because he was pursuing some sort of peaceful outcome, or was he representing an enemy and indeed a broader populace that actually supports the destruction, the complete annihilation of the state of Israel and the Jewish people, as incidentally is codified in their charter?
He's representing an enemy. I mean, there's no question that the Hamas organization is an enemy of the state of Israel, an enemy of the Jewish people. That is for sure. But the question that I'm trying to answer is, how do you defeat that enemy? And part of the reason why a group like Hamas has such traction among its people is because there's no alternative future. People without hope turn to groups like Hamas and turn to violence and turn to the kinds of activities that we have seen them pursue since the blockades of Gaza began to be imposed after Hamas came to power. The answer to this in the long run is to provide Palestinian people with hope and to provide them with a pathway and a leadership such as the potential for a reformed PA that is being denied by this government of Israel.
So before we turn to the reformed PA, I'm assuming that you believe that a military component is essential for securing the state of Israel and its future. And if that assumption is correct, and feel free to tell me if I'm not correct there, I'm wondering why you were so enthusiastic about the Ceasefire Compliance Act in 2026, which was introduced, and supporting it, you said, and I'm quoting here, that the act puts into law the common sense principle that American weapons cannot be used by the Israeli government in Gaza and the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, in ways that fundamentally violate American values and directly contravene US interests. How is fighting an enemy sworn to our distraction and sending our own soldiers forward to do so without requesting any soldiers from any other country, including the United States of America, how is that in any way contradictory to American interests, especially as it goes to the heart of stopping the violent spread of Islamic Jihad and the success of Iranian proxies around the Middle East and beyond? Why is that in violation of American interests?
Well, let's be very, very precise. What the Ceasefire Compliance Act is saying is when the United States provides arms to Israel, those arms have to be used in compliance with American law, and they have to be used in the spirit of American values and our interests. And when American arms are being given to settler terrorist groups on the West Bank, and those settler terrorist groups are creating violence and are destroying villages and displacing Palestinians and creating more violence, that is not in American interest, and that is where we say...
Forgive me, Jeremy, that's not what we're talking. I realize that you're trying to shift this towards a challenge, a law enforcement challenge.
But you asked about the Ceasefire Compliance Act, and that is part of the Ceasefire Compliance Act. So I'm just making sure that your viewers understand that.
Thank you for drawing our attention to that. But I feel that you're trying to shift away from the nub of my question. I'm not talking about a law enforcement issue that I can assure you will be resolved by the Israeli government. And I don't think that what's going on in Judea and Samaria amounts to anything like the challenge that you're saying that it does by any stretch of the imagination. I'm talking about what goes on inside Gaza, which is included in this. And I say it again, given that Israel sends its own soldiers forward and pays the sacrifice by way of putting its own soldiers in harm's way, how is ensuring the security of the state of Israel in the face of an enemy sworn to our destruction in any way a contravention of American standards and values?
If the IDF and if this government of Israel uses the weapons in compliance with our laws, then there won't be any impact from the Ceasefire Compliance Act.
Do you have a reason to suspect that the IDF, which I think is the most moral military in the world today, is using the weapons? You've just used the phrase if. Do you have any reason to suspect that the IDF is using American weaponry in a manner that contravenes American values?
Yes, and I've written about that directly. The way in which the war was conducted after the beginning of the war. J Street, by the way, supported Israel's right to defend itself on October 7th and supported its right to go after Hamas as a result of the horrific attacks that took place. There's no question that any nation in the world would have responded and would have taken action to protect its citizens and go after those who perpetrated the crimes. The question became, what was the next 2 years about? When did it cross a line? When did dropping 2,000 bombs on civilian high-rises, killing hundreds of people, become an acceptable use of American weapons. And I think that the line was crossed at a certain point, probably several months into the operation. We began to say, and I know that a number of, again,
Jeremy, I'm sorry, because I understand what you're saying. You're saying that the war went on for too long. Several months into
it was the way it was conducted.
Okay, you take issue with the way it was conducted. I understand. I disagree, but I understand you. But the notion that the war started to drag on for too long months into the campaign is completely nonsensical, in my opinion. Our hostages were still there. They've only recently come home, many of them bereft of the gift of life, incidentally. And Hamas has still not been dismantled and relegated to never presenting a threat to Israel or the Jewish people again. So the goals of the war aims remained. You're not suggesting that it ought to be wrapped up because it makes for uncomfortable viewing somewhere in the United States of America, are you? Just because it went on for a little bit too long.
Well, I think you're being very dismissive. I think that the idea that it's quote unquote uncomfortable viewing, there's a sense of Jewish morality here that you don't do to other people what you don't want done to yourself. The idea that you would close the borders of Gaza and not provide the people with any food for 3 months, that you would bring
that
the
did not occur. That did not happen. The people who denied the people of Gaza food for 3 months.
I don't know if you were watching.
Not only was I watching, Jeremy, with respect, not only was I watching, but I was serving in this war inside the Gaza Strip at various parts of it.
There were no food and no trucks and no supplies allowed into Gaza.
That's distinct from there being food inside Gaza because of a plethora of food deliveries. I just want to conclude with one thought for you to consider. As you've said, the Jewish ethos is don't ask others to live by a standard that we wouldn't want to live by ourselves. Perhaps from the United States, you might be a little bit more circumspect before asking Israel to make concessions to a genocidal terrorist organization such as Hamas that is calling for our destruction while we live just a kilometer away from that hotbed. I would ask you to consider that, and I thank you very, very much indeed.
I think you're presenting a false choice to your viewers, and I appreciate the chance, as you said, to have a little bit more time to express the actual alternative opinion.
I would welcome you back if you'll come back in the future. Thank you very much, Jeremy Ben-Ami. And now joining me in studio is Boris Shtonda, a veteran of service in one of the IDF's most elite units, whose right leg was amputated above the knee following a catastrophic injury that he sustained while fighting inside Gaza in the aftermath of the October 7th attack. Now, since then, Boris has recovered, married his sweetheart, and climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. And he's here with me as he trains to compete in an Ironman competition. Boris, it's a privilege to have you here with me.
It's a privilege to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for being here. It's just grateful.
So, Boris, I want to ask something that really demonstrates the ethos of our soldiers. You went in, you were an elite soldier, you lost your leg, as did others in your unit. Knowing now all that you've gone through and had to go through in order to recover, would you still elect to serve in that conflict, in that war against Hamas?
For sure. For 100%, I'm going to do it again and again. And if I'm going to know about what's going to happen to me, I don't think I'm going to hesitate or something. I'm going to do it again and again and again. Of course, we have only one state for the Jewish nation. And this state is here in our Holy Land, in Israel, in the Middle East. And we're going to live here. We're going to stay here for decades, for thousands of years ahead. And this is our future, and this is our past, and this is our, present.
And what would be your message to the soldiers who are continuing this fight against Hamas to this day, including inside the Gaza Strip, but also elsewhere as we fight on other fronts?
You're doing a great job for all the Western countries, not only for the Israel, and you're doing something very historical. What our IDF army doing right now is something that no one did in the Middle East, defend in so many areas our country, from north, from south, from the sea, from the air, and we attacked all these countries: Yemen, Iran, Lebanon, Syria, everyone, and we just defeat them. And we're going to do it again and again and again.
Talking about doing things again and again and again, just changing subjects a little bit. You've climbed Mount Kilimanjaro since your injury twice, as I understand it. Once almost to the summit, and the second time you went back at it and you got to the summit. Let me ask you, why have you decided to keep pushing yourself this way, competing in an Ironman, rather than sitting still, focusing on perhaps taking life a little bit easier, given everything that you've gone through? What motivates you, Boris?
I think I just want to make some challenge for myself and for other individuals who lost their identity, who lost their limbs, who lost their physical identity. You know, I'm a man. I was in some special forces. I trained all my life. And right now I find myself in hospital and I amputee. And my motivation to do something like this is just to realize that life is just going ahead. And me want to come with my life ahead with me. And I did the Kilimanjaro twice, like you said. In the second time, I bring my wife to the summit. She almost divorced me, but it was just amazing experience. And right now, I'm training for the Kona, Hawaii Ironman. It's like just the world championship in Ironman. It's crazy. I'm swimming, I'm cycling, I'm running. And this Friday, I'm gonna run my first half marathon. I never did half marathon.
Are you going to let me run it with you?
It's going to be my privilege.
So let me ask you another question.
Yes.
Everybody's very worried about Jew hatred on American campuses. One of the things that we do is we bring cadets who are going to be officers in the US Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, not of the Jewish faith, to the death camps in Poland to learn about what happened to our people there, and then on to the State of Israel. You came to Poland to lecture to those cadets. Why did you do that? And what's your impression of the next generation of American leadership from what you encountered?
When I saw these cadets, they just give me so biggest motivation for me, because I saw a great people that they're not Jewish, but you guys bring them to all the Holocaust survivors museums and the concentration camps. And when they saw all that happened to our nation, they realized why we need our state. And like you said before, this is the future leadership of United States. And they're gonna realize why Jewish nation needs state here in the Middle East, our tiny country here. And when I realized it, I just came with you to this trip to bring them our identity. What is Israel identity? What is the Jewish identity? And my grandfather was also Holocaust survivor, but not from Poland, from Ukraine. Mm-hmm. And I just tell them his story and why I'm defending my country right now. He never can imagine that his son gonna defend his country. Mm-hmm. It's something that he can't imagine something like that.
Boris, let me ask you another question. There are so many people who, quite frankly, oftentimes surrender in the face of challenges. What would you, as someone who's overcome so much, what would your message be to people who are facing challenges in their day-to-day life with everything you've gone through?
If it's physical challenges, I think you just need to tell yourself it's only pain. You know what I mean? It's only pain, and every pain is just ending. You just, it just depends on what time is this pain gonna be. But I think all of us need some challenges in our lives. It doesn't matter if it's physical, if it's mental, maybe it's in our family. We have, every one of us have brothers, sisters, mother, father, wife. Every one of us have some challenges. And I think we need to overcome ourselves with these challenges. That's what builds us in our mentality, in our physically. And I think for someone like me, who have some physical issues, that I'm doing something that just a normal person can do it. No, only 0.0005% of the world doing the Ironman.
Mm-hmm.
What percent of amputees doing the Ironman?
Well, that's the truth of the matter, is that shows
Exactly.
what a remarkable individual you are, Boris, and I know you'll be a source of great inspiration for our viewers, and I'll be looking on as you continue to be a leader in anything and everything that you do. Thank you so much for all you've done.
Thank you very much.
It's a privilege to have you here in studio, and I hope you'll come back soon.
It's my privilege. Thank you very much for inviting me.
No, on another note, there's a long-held belief that any rend in the US-Israel relationship could only be fashioned by the American progressive left. And while I well understand that presumption, given that I'm of the right, I believe we must expose the dangerous rise of Jew hatred on our side of the political spectrum. Tucker Carlson's recent screed against Israel in front of Ambassador Mike Huckabee is merely the latest example of this phenomenon, one that Carlson dubiously explains was powered by his opposition to America's potential military strike against Iran, and which caused him to hurry over here in protest. So what is Carlson's playbook, and where might all of this lead us to? Well, Carlson's effectiveness comes not from asking his followers to oppose Israel based on a care for the other, as the progressive left has long done, but rather to do so out of a care for themselves, based on religion, economics, politics, and nationality, with each category compounding the other. On religion, for example, Carlson wants American Christians to believe that their Middle Eastern Christian brethren are being systematically murdered by Israel. On economics, he wants to convince hard-up American Christians that their tax dollars are being sent to Israel in order to fund the murder of Christians instead of creating opportunities for Americans at home, thus forcing Americans to take out loans in order to make ends meet that are accompanied by usurious rates of interest, a practice that leads to the permanent financial subjugation of said Americans. And who is responsible for that practice? Bankers, according to Carlson. And what is bankers code for in Carlson's lexicon? Jews, of course. And on politics and nationality, Carlson wants Americans to believe that if they cannot get their representatives to hear their grievances, that's because their congressman's time is monopolized by a shadowy cohort of American Jews loyal only to Israel, who are endlessly lobbying American officials to supply weapons that kill Christians while keeping Americans broke and thus politically unenchanted. I hope that you can see the compounding that I referenced. But Carlson isn't alone. Steve Bannon recently described Ben Shapiro as a cancer, one that spreads and metastasizes, using terms of disease and disease spreading to attack the kippah-wearing influencer. Meanwhile, the slanders of Candace Owens really are too numerous to recount here, and Megyn Kelly recently asserted that the internal schism that threatens the perennial rule of the right centers around Israel. So where might all of this lead us to? Well, if the regurgitation of the historic playbook against Jews is ever wedded to a future American leader whose views cohere with the crackpot conspiracy theorists such as Carlson, Owens, Bannon, and others, I believe that across a long enough timeline, a future American-led economic sanctions campaign against a Middle Eastern country could well end up targeting not Iran, but Israel. And the next massive buildup of American military ordnance in this region could have not Tehran in its sights, but Jerusalem. And in such a scenario, people like Carlson won't be rushing to this region seeking to avert such an outcome. Rather, they will be applauding it from afar, their dangerous ambitions having been realized. This might sound far-fetched to you, but remember, what we are now hearing from these isolationists was considered unthinkable to so many just a handful of years ago. But here we are, nevertheless. Nobody on the right would consider the scenario that I've just described to be unthinkable were a Bernie Sanders type to one day occupy the Oval Office, for example. It's high time that we start conjuring with, preempting, and preparing to ideologically defeat the very same prospect that is now coming from this element within the American right. Their playbook may well be from mid-20th century Europe, but this threat most decidedly is not. It is here. It is currently gaining ground within the right-wing commentariat at this very moment, and it absolutely has Israel firmly in its sights. All of us must pay attention. And that concludes this episode of the show. Join me next week for more Opinionated.